sometime early next year, we are given to understand. So there has been a letter which has gone out from the BCCI to the state associations where the president of BCCI, Sourav Ganguly, has said that the board is working on the league format tournament. More details are going to follow. Ganguly, in fact, has also announced that the men's IPL is going to go back to the home and away format from the next season. So that's the kind of outlook, that's the kind of plan that we are talking about. Listen exactly to what star Indian batsman Smriti Mandhana had to say on the possibility of women's IPL now having a proper rollout plan.
I think whenever we play, there's a lot of enthusiasm back home. Whichever format we play, I think, because I think Indian fans love cricket. They turn up to support us. I think regardless of one day or T20 or something. So yeah, women's IPL will be great.
Women's IPL would be great. So says one leading star of women's cricket in India. But let's get further perspective on this from the experts. K Shriniwas Rao is cricket editor at Times of India, and also joining us this evening is brand guru Harish Bijoor. Let's come to you first, Srinivas. I want to ask you, what state of readiness is the BCCI now for women's IPL? What do we know about the rollout plan so far?
Right. First of all, this letter is a little too late in the day. It doesn't mean anything because whatever has to be planned is already been set in motion. I can tell you that the women's IPL is going to begin on the 5th of March, which is a Sunday. I think the 6th of March is a Monday. The final is scheduled for March 23rd. It's going to have 6 teams for which the BCCI is going to do an e-auction of the franchisees. Once that is over, an auction will be held for the players, for which the BCCI has already started signing contracts with cricketers, professional women cricketers from around the world. I'll give you an example. Deandra Doughton, the West Indian all-rounder who announced her retirement from West Indies cricket. I can tell you, for one, she's one of those big names that has already signed the central contract with BCCI, and likewise, many cricketers from around the world. So all of this has been set in motion quite some time ago. This is just going out by way of formal emails now to state associations.
Fair enough, but I want to understand the size and scale that we're looking at when it comes to women's IPL. Is it going to be anything like the Australian Big Bash, you think?
So you have to understand that you cannot be, you cannot be looking at this property that's going to come from any perspective of any men's T20 league, that is in place right now. Big Bash Women's League is an example of potentially what can be done in the format and in the space. But what BCCI is going to be primarily, it's going to be different. Why is it going to be different? Because unlike Big Bash, which is run by state-owned teams, this is going to be a franchise-owned team. So you're going to be looking at established cricketing ecosystems like Mumbai Indians in Mumbai, Chennai Super Kings, whether it's Delhi Capitals or Lucknow Super Giants. You're going to be seeing established franchisees coming in and bidding for franchisees in women's cricket. So while it is going to pick the cricketing nuances from what we see in Big Bash, the business model that you're going to see here is going to be very different and relatively bigger and better.
Well, let's bring in Harish Bijoor on this as well. When it comes to positioning of women's IPL, Harish, is the Indian market and the audience mature enough for it, you think?
Oh, yes, very definitely so. If you really look at India, I think, we are totally mature to accept an IPL women's league altogether. Eyeballs are ready for it. I do believe sponsors will be ready for it. Because please note that a women's IPL will focus on women. And don't ever forget that women are really completely integral entities within an Indian home. So why must it not succeed is the question.
Fair enough. Srinivas, I also wanted to ask you, because when we talk about the domestic season for women's cricket, now that is fairly restricted. Should that have been the focus before we went ahead with a women's IPL?
Yes, in fact, if you look at the domestic season, the calendar that BCCI released, which was just last month, if you look at the structuring that has been done, women's domestic cricket events for women has been like literally kind of expanded. in not just in terms of the number of teams involved and the duration involved, but also in the number of tournaments that have been facilitated. Now, all of that is being done primarily to make it to sort of a feeder line for women's IPL, as I have always mentioned in the past also, which is again, picking from what BCCI also thinks about this whole space, is that unless you have a strong domestic circuit in place, you will not be able to create a feeder line for a tournament as important as a women's IPL, from the length and breadth of what they are trying to put in place rather. So that's why it's very imperative. And I think some very, very right decisions are being made in terms of, trying to structure the women's domestic circuit so as to make it into a good feeder line for women's IPL.
Okay, and Harish, when you look at the BCCI strategy over here, what do you think it actually is? What do you think is the driving force behind women's IPL, the thought process right now?
Well, IPL has gone on for season after season. It has been a tremendous success. And I think, what has been established is a huge corpus of money, which comes from captive eyeballs on a league. And this is India's most successful league. And hopefully it will be a global success as the number one global success at one point of time. Now, what would a women's league do? A women's league would aim to replicate that success in the men's league, possibly, take out monies from the coffers of corporates and brands which would want to advertise on this league. So at the end of the day, IPL is not cricket, IPL is not entertainment, it's both. But more importantly, IPL is business. And women's IPL is likely to be a business as well.
The question is, how big a business do you reckon it's going to be, Harish? Do you see big money coming in? Can we expect sponsors with deep pockets wanting a pie of the women's IPL action?
Oh, yes. I would like to say that, sponsors expect to divide their monies across three basic segments: men, women, and children. Now, when it comes to items which are related to men, most programming which is very men-centric gets money from men's brands. When it comes to items which are women-centric and kid-centric, they typically go to anything which is women-centric. And if you really look at the entertainment genre, which does exist in this country, most advertising money of the women and children goes to women's program sector. Afternoon news included of all items. So if you really ask me, an IPL women's edition will actually attract a fair bit of money, and corporates, I do believe, are waiting and willing to spend, and I'm sure they're going to be happy to spend.
Would they be as happy to spend, like Harish is pointing out, Srinivas? What do you know about sponsorships and where the BCCI is hoping that this works out as a strong economic package for them?
Okay, see, listen, I have always been of this view, and there are people in the BCCI who also think on these lines, where women's cricket, and with all due respect to women who play the game at the highest level and have brought glory, to the country, the point is that women's IPL cannot be looked as a business model. You are not doing this to create a business proposition out of it. You are doing this to create an opportunity for women to establish themselves, in a franchise-based cricketing tournament. So this is not a money-making proposition here. So there is no business model involved, as much as the whole idea has to be around how do you create a property like this and how do you sustain it so that it runs independently and is not dependent on any external forces. So I'll give an example. BCCI wants to do an e-auction of the franchisees, the 6 franchisees that are going to be sold in women's IPL. What I have always said that, instead of actually, doing an e-auction, they should have invited existing franchisees in the IPL to come on board and take over these franchisees, because there is an existing ecosystem and an infrastructure that is already in place. Although I have no doubts whatsoever that the 6 franchise owners who are going to come into women's IPL will are more likely to be the existing IPL franchise owners, because they understand the business of it. So they will have, once they come in, they will have to look at this ecosystem from a sustainable aspect. See, let's be very honest here. It's not like people are going to pay top dollar to go and watch women's cricket. It's not like the sponsor is going to come in and put in some great deal of value to, women's cricket the way you're saying. I might come across as somebody who's saying this and who's being rude, but I'm not. I mean, this is a reality. For women's cricket has to go a certain distance, establish itself in order to make money. So for the first 10 years, you're not going to be looking at it.
Yes.
You should not be looking at it as a business proposition.
Well,
you should be looking at it as an exercise
yes,
that could help women's cricket stand
well,
on
I'm
its
sure Srinivas, Harish Bijoor would obviously vouch for this as well, that it takes a while to build a new brand. And here you are starting from scratch. It is going to take 10 years or even perhaps more. But BCCI has got the wherewithal and they are pushing in everything that they've got, at least at this stage, to get that ball rolling. And for that, we wish them the very best. And women's cricket, all the very best. Harish Bijoor and Srinivas Rao, always a pleasure chatting with you. Thanks very much for joining us on India Tonight. And we are completely out of time on this edition. Thanks so much for joining us. We'll be back same time again tomorrow. So we hope to see you then. I'm Vikram Oza from me and the team. Have a fantastic evening ahead. Bye-bye.